Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League. It's our first episode of the new year, which means it's the one where we cover all of the shocks and the not so much shocks in one of the biggest dates in the Irish League calendar, the Irish Cup 5th round weekend. We're going to go through all the games, look back at some of the matches which went down just before the new year. We'll sift our way through some of the early rumblings in the January transfer window as we're back on the saddle in your latest, yes, weekly edition of Kicking Match in 2025. It's probably the biggest gap that I've had between podcasts outside of, the summer. But a few days off, New Year, all lang syne in the background, and it's time to have one of those big episodes in the calendar. I gave this man a shout to say, do you want to come back to make it 3 out of 3 in a row? And he said yes. So here to do his now annual review of the 5th round weekend in the Irish Cup. It's great to have my guest on the podcast, writer and reporter around the Irish League. It's Barry Flynn.
Yes, good evening, Peter. A pleasure to be here, as always.
Great to have you here. Any of those, New Year's resolutions or anything like that kind of you have in the back of your mind? I feel like it's my duty as a host to ask everyone I talk to a question like that.
Yeah, dry January. I've sort of failed that again. But beyond that, everybody starts New Year with the best of intentions. But let me tell you, the 6th of January, everybody's back at work. It is the most miserable day of the year. But at least we had the Irish Cup on Saturday to sort of brighten things and to keep us in that glow of contentment football-wise, Peter.
It's truly one of the most unique days of the year. I've been getting a unique view of it recently, being behind the scenes. I think that was my third or fourth 5th round day. Everybody gets a go on a day like that when there's so many games. There were some called off, but we got our well worth of big games, shocks, goal fests, as we always like to see, some ties between the minnows and the big guys. But we didn't get to talk about games that happened on the 30th of December, and I just want to kind of reflect here. That day very much overshadowed by the news that broke of the sudden death of Michael Newbury. I'm sure people who listen to this podcast be well aware of the story. Former Linfield defender, Cliftonville player at the time, his 27th birthday. A real shockwave that went throughout the league that day.
Absolutely, Peter. I was covering Carrick Rangers against Crusaders on the evening, and the word had spoken in the Linfield and the Cliftonville game was off, and to me there wasn't an appetite for play to go ahead that night. But I think in the best interest of football, the games carried on, but the games were lacking. The one I was at was you just felt that there was something missing, and it was a 0-0 draw. But the death of Michael Newbury and that the commemorations carried on to Saturday. I was at Solitude. It was a very somber occasion and a very surreal occasion. And sometimes it's one of those pinch me moments that happen in local football, and it affects everybody. So yeah, it's been a hard time for the wider Irish League family, but the football has continued in the circumstances, and we just dust down and keep going. That's it.
And unfortunately, it's not the only death which has happened over the past number of days. A real giant behind the scenes within the game. Former Glenavon chairman Adrian Tier, a man who I think for a lot of people, if you weren't someone that were in our role being a part around the press box or around Glenavon, you perhaps didn't appreciate the influence that he had. But what a stalwart for that club in Lurgan, and also perhaps it goes unnoticed is the impact he had in the formation of NIFL, and was someone that really pushed this league and the game here in Northern Ireland forward immensely.
Yeah, Adrian was an ever present for my, any time I had been to Glenavon, and the work running up and down those stairs, in and out of the boardroom, organising and getting things done. You do take it for granted because when you're up in the stand, you don't appreciate sometimes the hard work that's involved. And Adrian, a long-serving stalwart with Glenavon. In fact, my wife's uncle played for Glenavon in the late 70s, early 80s. Jared Clark, he lives in Melbourne, and he contacted me to say that he'd heard that Adrian had passed away, and he remembers European adventures back in the day with Glenavon. And on the Glenavon's website, there's a fantastic tribute to Adrian. And Gary Hamilton spoke, very well of Adrian on Saturday on the radio. But it's just those long-serving stalwarts that you take for granted. And now yet another legend in local soccer has passed on, and it is a difficult period. But you have to pay tribute, for the long-standing service and what he did for actual local football, Adrian Tier.
As we spoke earlier, fifth round of the Irish Cup. It did change a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Where it was like the first round proper or something, but it's known and it still remains or has returned to being the fifth round. It is, of course, the round where all the big boys get to come in and play. No all Premiership ties this time round, which escalated or improved the chances for shocks and unique fixtures, and we got a few of them. And to headline this part of the podcast, go to the big result of the weekend. And it was maybe on the borderline of the shock zone. A team in the Championship who were going good against a Larne team who have been a bit flat, maybe out of practice, or at least, game mode practice. And the champions, or double champions of the top flight of this country, go up to Limavady, and they get done in extra time. This is what the Cup is all about, Barry.
It was fantastic listening to Eric commentating through with Liam Beckett on the extra time. And you got that sense, my goodness, I think, Limavady could do this. Having been up there 3 or 4 times this season, what a fantastic community club. And Paul Owens, I was reading in the paper today that they sort of sacrificed a few Christmas dinners and nights off to go and train in preparation for this game. And then the joy when he was being interviewed afterwards. But I think what they're saying is that we, Limavady, second in the Championship, beat the team that beat Ghent in the Europa League. And that is the black and white of it. And I've seen them. They're an exciting team when they have an attacking mind. They're fast. John Butcher, players like that there, and Burman, who got the goal. These are guys at some of the top divisions I'd say they'd be looking at. But what they've done this season coming up, people thought they'd be lucky to, sort of retain their place in the Championship. They're fast, they're exciting, and Larne got their comeuppance on Saturday. Gary Haveram was not happy, but hey, does that sort of sum up Larne's season at this stage? Is that the epitome of what is happening at Larne at this present point of time? But I'll not take it away from the Roadsiders. They're a fantastic community club, as I say. They turned out in their numbers and they got the victory, and onwards and upwards to them.
Let's give a bit more love to this Limavady side. They come out of the PIL. It was quite a tight PIL race last year, and they've used that momentum to their advantage going in to the Championship. Clearly, in recent times, they've regained that ambition. Probably a lot of people won't remember them being a top flight team as a part of that big, expansive 16-team league, maybe at the start of the century. But they've fallen down, and they were a part of a collection of teams that used to be higher up in the ladder who have fallen away. And you've seen Armagh get back up to the second tier. Limavady are there again, and they've built this side with, yes, a couple of players that they developed themselves, but they've benefited from this Coleraine exodus themselves. You have Gallagher and Nets, who was playing on and off for Coleraine over the past few seasons. Walker have been playing a bit of football in top flight. Mullen came from Coleraine. We all know about number 8, Laurie, right there in the middle of the pitch. We've seen that shirt do some brilliant things within the Irish League, and he was such a rock for them. Parkhill, Tosh, McCready, give them that spice up top. McCrudden was on the bench. This is a team that might not have these players right at the peak of their powers, but that experience really came to the fore in a big matchup against a full-time team in Larne.
Yeah, this is the beauty of the Irish Cup. I mean, the showgrounds at Limavady on Saturday was like going back to the baseball ground in the 70s. It was a heavy pitch, it was muddy. The famous phrase from Dad's Army, they don't like it up them. And that is the type of thing that Larne, it's their bread and butter in the Irish Cup, having to go to places like this to fight, to take on a team that is absolutely fighting and on fire in the Championship. And what Paul Owens has done, he hasn't looked too far. He's gone to Coleraine. I was actually doing the game 2 weeks ago, and I was going through the team sheet, and I think there was 11 from the subs and the first team were actually had Coleraine links. So I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, there was a story that Carlos Tevez, Paul Brewster was the chair of Limavady at the time, and Tevez had walked out in Manchester City, and he sent a fax, that's how long it is, to Man City saying that they're prepared to keep him fit at Limavady if they want to send him across. So I was interviewing Paul Brewster, and he says, look, this is a guy, Tevez, he's, top class hotels, top class restaurants, expensive bars, and you're asking to go to Limavady. And I says, would he not consider Coleraine to be a better option if he came over to this part of the world? And he says, no, no, no. Coleraine has stolen enough of our players over the years, and they owe us a few. And David Brewster has passed away, sadly. And I think, he was absolutely right because there's such a close proximity. But for Paul Owens to go in and to see that Korean players, in the periphery, he has taken them and molded them. And that was one of those joyous moments on Saturday, Peter. It was just fantastic to listen to. And it's great for a community club like that.
It's a huge day in their history. And if we actually look at the championship table, which is very much your bread and butter, Barry, I was guilty of this, talking about Bangor running away with it, and form and the points total was very much looking that. But if I have a little peek at the table right now, 23 games played by both Bangor and Limavady, they're your top two. It is a 6 point gap between Bangor and Limavady, but Bangor lose out in a dramatic fashion to Anna, draw as well before that. Limavady could use this momentum to their advantage and puts them in a good spot, maybe just for second on that playoff spot, but beyond. Paul Owens, the manager for them, talked about how he sees the Premiership in their crosshairs over the next few years. If they keep up their form, they might not be too far away from it this term.
Well, Friday night, why did they do this on me? They put on Bangor against Limavady at Clandyboy on Friday night. That is the championship game to me. They're on a high. Bangor have a lot to prove. Limavady go down. If they get a win down there, which to me is not impossible, and it is, to me, it's a 50-50 game. If Limavady get that, and then the next day you've got Dundela and the Welders playing, some people think it's an advantage. If Bangor win on the Friday night, that's great. They can sit back and see what the rest do. But if Limavady can put the cat among the pigeons on Friday night, my goodness, that could shake that league up. But getting back to the cup tie, I hope Limavady, they will celebrate that. But, the bread and butter is sort of what he's building and what the club's building. I call them a cup of tea club. From the car park to the press box, I'm asked about 7 or 8 times, do you want a cup of tea? Which to me, I don't drink tea, but I just think that is the essence of the championship. And this is a club under Paul Owens, who's a great speaker and he is a great motivator. And to me, that was just one of those nice moments.
There's a real exclusive. Barry Flynn doesn't drink tea. What is the world coming to? Lauren,
yeah.
It's been a positive season on these big tentpole moments, getting into Europe, getting that victory against Ghent, but everything outside of that, almost from September onwards, has been slightly muddy, and this just gets added to the slight confusing picture from the outside of where this Lauren side is. Losing that game, of course, the league is the big focus, and talk going into this season was, well, could this be the year where they can go for the double? They've never won the Irish Cup. Is this another blow for them, or is it perhaps just a minor blip before they really get going?
See, it seems like a hangover for Lauren. This year has just been one long hangover, serious hangover with a number of really delirium tremens in the middle of it, if you ask me. I mean, I still can't put my finger upon why Tiernan Lynch left a club. The other issue is the new manager coming in, and then the whole issue about the license. I know Gary Havering was very scathing of his team on Saturday. And then the position they see themselves in the league. To me, looking at that Lauren side, they'll not win the league because points on the board is better than games in hand. And I don't think they have that collective willpower to do that, the supremacy that they've shown over the years. The other issue is this dream of Lauren is beginning to dissipate in front of everybody's eyes. Have they peaked? Has 2 championships sort of been have they peaked? Is the community dream there? And I mean, it's an awful place on a dark January night to get the bus home from Limavady after a defeat in the Irish Cup in horrendous conditions. And it's a legacy far removed from European football and a victory over Ghent, but it is a rude awakening. And I don't know. I think there's more to come out as this season progresses as to what is going on in Larne and Project Larne, which it was a collective project for a number of years. And they always sort of kept things, Larne was this, Larne was that, and this is the dream, this is what we're aiming for. And now that they've reached the promised land, we're next. And the where next is where we are today and where we were on Saturday.
It was always going to be the challenge once they got to the peak of football in this country. How were they going to react? How were they going to deal with the pressure? Based on last season, there was a feeling that this could be the start of a real dynasty for them. And getting into Europe, the signs were there, but little things have just crept in. They needed perhaps a bit more of a refresh than others expected. The league bonus factor is significant. I mean, they're just not scoring goals. This managers thing in the background hasn't helped. The fixtures is something that we were concerned would be an issue. There's no doubt that it has been and will be going forward, because the amount of Tuesday games is just dizzying if you think about it. And they've got a big week ahead of them. They've got Crusaders that will no doubt have been played by the time a majority of the people listen to this. And then in quick succession, the Friday night games are back at Inver Park and they're against Cliftonville. So look, 6 points, a hat trick from Andy Ryan in one of those games, or maybe across them. Panic over. But goal scoring's a problem. Playing away from Inver is starting to creep up, and we will see what happens in January, and we'll talk more about maybe other teams eyeing up their players. But to stick with the cup and to stick with the shocks, I think this was nailed on for me right in the middle of the shock zone. They were high flying coming into Boxing Day. That's now 3 losses in a row for Portadown, and they lose to their, what is it, a mile and a bit away, they were saying, Anna United, a team that has been a thorn in their side over the past few seasons. And I just don't think it was unexpected. This was Portadown team don't seem to do well down at the Anna, and it's a huge result for Kieran McGurgan and the team.
Look, I wouldn't like to be any team going down to the BMG Arena. I remember going down to see Glentoran getting duffed there in 2016, and there's no escape if you're the away side. The Glentoran fans that night went up to the changing room and they wanted Alan Kernahan, but they sent out Nacho Novo, and he had a sort of bare grasp of English. But I think some of the East Belfast vernacular, and which was littered with quite a few tasty words, was made him go, get, and that was the night Alan Kernahan left. Portadown train there, okay? This is absolutely, it was technically home ground for them in their own whatever, but Kieran McGurgan just can get that side, and they have absolutely great players, fast players, Stephen Murray, and I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised, Peter. And when they went 3-1 up, I went, because they went over and it says there's been another goal at the BMG, and I says, I bet you they've gone 3-1 up, and they did. And Portadown got the late goal, but you've local pride at stake. They know each other inside out, the two teams, and he just had them primed for the day. And you're just wondering, Portadown, they sort of began slowly and they got up to a sort of good momentum, a bit like Ballymena United. And, you're getting after Christmas, and I think a lot of teams are ripe. Premiership teams are ripe for the taking in the first round. And Anna United, fair play to them. I mean, the Portadown fans would have outnumbered them 10-1, but that was a sweet victory, a deserved victory, and let's see where it takes them. But I mean, a sickening blow for Niall and Portadown.
For sure, because they were doing so well before that. They were second. Was it going into Christmas Day? I was at their game at Mornview on Boxing Day, and I just thought they were outfought physically, actually, by Glenavon that day. And Glenavon just had that wee bit of spark. I don't think there's any shame in losing to Glentoran home or away at this moment in time. And the fall to Anna, it's not what the Ports want to be doing, but they've had awful luck in the Cups this year. Perhaps they used all their Cup luck last year in that big.
They're under the League Cup final.
Maybe they'll not be too worried. And of course, survival and all that stuff Niall Curry will talk about in the league. That will be the aim. So not particularly great. The one positive is maybe James Teelan, a player coming in for them, getting the first goal, setting up the second. I think watching them, I thought they needed a bit of pace out wide, or at least an alternative option. And you got to see kind of silver lining in days like this if you're a Portadown fan, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. But Niall will be very, very stuck, I'd say, to take a lot of positives out of that. That short journey back to Shamrock Park, thankfully, would have taken about a minute, but I think the inquest will be ongoing. That Portadown in a cup run this season might have been one of the fallback positions, but yes, Teeling was the positive to take out of that.
Other shock, or at least the headline of the shocks, is Ards taking Ballymena United as a scalp for themselves. Got the early goal, doubled it late on, but Ballymena did pull one back. But it's probably lack of goals come to the fore for Ballymena, and they threw everything at Ards, and for the second year in a row, they're able to beat out top flight opposition.
Yeah, without a penalty shootout to do that. And John Bailey was exuberant. He was totally you could sense the elation when he was interviewed after it, because it was a big day. Ards have not been doing much in the championship. They can't get a run together. And yeah, they're a loyal band, and I watched the game, and Ballymena did pepper the Ards goal, but Lady Luck was on their side on Saturday, and something for Ards fans to cheer about. But for Ballymena, I hope maybe this season is just not going to go like, fall off the way that the start of the season was. Have Ballymena peaked? Have they excelled themselves? We don't know, but being put out of the Irish Cup will not help the situation, and difficult games coming up for Ballymena in the league. And you're beginning to wonder about, is the party over, that feel good factor over for the Sky Blues? Remains to be seen, but the way that Lady Luck deserted them on Saturday was very obvious in my view. But look, Ards, I'm a championship man, and I see these teams week in, week out, and that was a little bit of joy for the loyal band of the Ards fans. Yeah,
It's funny how different a couple of weeks, how that can just totally change the mood of a place. East Belfast was the host of a little battle between two of its residents, Harland Wolf Welders and Glentoran. And look, the Glens were given a bit of a scare by the Welders when the Welders went 2-1 up after an early goal from Glentoran. Maybe set it up where a lot of people felt as perhaps they were going to walk it. They've got Declan Devine signed in. He's going to be the leader of this club over the next while. They're getting good results. They've got a number of new recruits coming in January. They're second in the league. Things are really looking good for Glentoran. They eventually are able to see off Holland Wolf Welders, and you've got to favour them broadly in every game that's coming up for them. They look bright, they look sparky, and they're getting the results.
It's a bit like that film, The Life of Brian, where, I know you're the Messiah because I followed that many. There's been that many Glentoran managers have come along, and it was shaky there for a while. It would be shaky for Declan Devine. And then it's like one step forwards, two steps back. But they gave him this vote of confidence. They gave him the new contract. Fair play. He knows what he's doing. I think he's garnering that respect, and he's winning over the Glentoran supporters. Maybe this season, an Irish Cup would be great for East Belfast for the Oval. They are starved. But I watched the game on Friday night, and I must say I was very pleased. The manner in which the Welders went at the game, and for about 65, 70 minutes, it was, you could see an eager team, a younger team in my view. Josh Key, absolutely superb, and Declan did pick him out after the game, and I see him close up, and I see Tiernan O'Connor. These boys would just step into any side in the Premiership, but it was like a free-flowing hit. And I spoke to people today in work who were at the game, and he says it was a fantastic occasion. I mean, big crowd there, and all the entertainment, and there was a lot of functions laid on, and there was a lot of greats there, and that Blanchflower Stadium is crying out for Premiership football. And if we go to the Championship, we'll look at it. you know, it's maybe not this season for the Whalers, but it will happen in my view. They might get into a playoff, but that is the big type of occasion at the Blanchflower Stadium that you need to see, and that East Belfast, rivalry. To see that on a Friday night on live TV, I'm sure people who have been behind that welder side are saying this is where we need to go, and we don't want to be living in the shadows of Glentoran. But that little bit of know-how, maybe that little bit of extra fitness, told in the end there was a couple of poor mistakes that let the Glens back into it. But on a different day, they played with their hearts. They got the goals, especially just after the second half. They went 2-1 up. And I thought, well, there's too long to go here. And in fact, there was too long to go. Glentoran were patient. Whereas I think Glentoran may have panicked. Devine would have been on the sideline being that calming influence. Just do what you're doing and the goals will come. And they did. They forced the errors and they took their goals when they were presented. But great occasion for East Belfast. And Glentoran, there's something brewing at the Oval, but we don't want to sort of try and give them the hex at this stage. But Declan Devine seems to have that little know-how that may have been missing previously.
You're totally right about the Blanchflower. It's one of the new kids on the block when it comes to grounds in this league. And we've seen it showcased via a couple of big-time cup games. And for many people, they'll look at that and go, you know what? Wouldn't mind a wee away day there just to check it out. They are one of the teams that are up around near the top of the championship. They're kind of on the bubble as we speak. But to talk about an all championship game, which almost went the distance, it was the top of the table. Bangor going against Newington. It was a Martin Bradley goal, which was the decisive strike in extra time. But looking back at it, watching the highlights, perhaps questions, at least from a Newington perspective, on if in the lead up to the goal, was it a handball?
As they say, givable. I've seen them given, but until we have VAR and I see the clinical way it's done in England and Scotland, yeah, I think on a different day that would have, the referee would have seen that differently. But it's the Irish Cup; that's the breaks you get in the Irish Cup, and Newington came there as a free hit. Bangor had it all to lose, and a 2-1 victory at the end of the day was what Lee Feeney would have wanted, get them through to the next round, because Newington, they had nothing to play for. They went up to Clandeboy and they gave it everything, and it was closer than I had anticipated. But Bangor have got through, and after a bit of a shaky couple of weeks in the championship for them, I'll say they'll just be glad. They'll rest on their laurels and they'll move on. And that was an expected result.
Talk about expected results. I think I'll hold off what I think the game of the round was for a second. Linfield beat Wellington Rec 4-0. The Swifts beat Rather Island Rangers 5-0. Goal for their new striker Brandon Birmingham, which we'll talk about. Coleraine beat Armagh City 5-0, which I'm surprised by. Cliftonville beat out Banbridge Rangers 4-0. So a lot of times when it came, and then Crusaders beat Knockbreda 3-0. So a lot of games that seemed to be over quite early, and it was the top flight team asserting their dominance. Let's talk about the game you were at, just to highlight it. Cliftonville Banbridge Rangers, I know we spoke about at the very top of the podcast, but a very poignant day that must have been.
It was, and it was a strange atmosphere around Solitude. Cliftonville did what they had to do. I said to Jim Magilton afterwards, in the circumstances, there was a football match and it was almost secondary to the occasion. And he said he was pleased. They went out and did what they needed to do. Banbridge brought about 500-600 fans, which was great. They made great noise. But as a club, Banbridge and Cliftonville, it was exemplary the way they marched out at 5-3. There was a minute's applause. There was 2 wreaths. There was 2 jerseys. And that to me was just fitting and poignant. And then the game kicked off. Cliftonville, Ryan Corrigan got their goal after 12 minutes. Banbridge defended well, but in the second half, you could see that little wee bit extra. Cliftonville could bring in the substitutes, and they finished the game off 4-0. But it was all about remembering Michael Newbury. The football, as I said, was incidental, but Jim Magilton will be pleased. The team did in the circumstances what they needed to do, and they got the home draw, Glenavon or Dundela in the next round. That's something from a championship perspective that Paddy McLaughlin might need to look out for from Dundela. They are potentially capable. I know that.
Ballymallard beat out Ballymacash down at the Bluebell, and in the game I was at, I think easily the best game of the round. I actually went through my little notepad. The highest goal scoring game I've ever covered. It was 3-3 at half time. Taylor's Avenue. It was 11th in the top flight Carrick Rangers against 11th in the championship Newry City. Newry in particular has been having a great season, but that was a barnstormer of a ding-dong match. Back and forward, the goals went, and particularly that first half, I did not want it to end.
You get that in the Irish Cup. Newry unfancied come up. Let's have a hit. Nothing to lose. Stephen Baxter was scathing. You saw it at first hand about some of the defending at the back for Carrick Rangers. And when we were going over to you on Saturday, I was going, this is unbelievable. I wanted to get a taxi up from Solitude. Shannon Clucas says I didn't think there was going to be an upset. And I tend to agree. Once we got the half time, you would expect Rangers to kick on in the second half to just edge the game, which they did. But again, a team like Newry going up there, nothing to lose. And you have to feel for Carrick because I saw them against Crusaders. They were the better side in the league game, the Thursday or the Thursday before. But the Irish Cup's a different kettle of fish, and high scoring games, you go home with a smile on your face, and it just sounded fantastic. But it's all about getting over the line. Carrick did that. Let's look to the next round because you're always going to get these battles in the mud. And they showed that grit and determination to actually see off Newry. They learn from that. They learn about the defending. They'll come up against a higher class of opposition. But I think Stephen Baxter would be very pleased just to get that over and done with.
Some of their new signings or returnees really added to the mix for Newry. I was surprised just based on the showing that they've struggled so much. I thought Jamie Doran, who is a Glenavon player coming into the midfield, added a nice bit of connective tissue between defence and attack. It spread the ball out really nicely. And Brian Healy, a player you and I have both talked about. It's almost surprising to remind ourselves that he was in fact on loan from Newry at Ballyclare. They've changed that. They've brought him in, and he'll be a massive factor for them trying to get away from the bottom of that division. Carrick, what do you say that they have 3 games in a row where they don't score and they don't concede any, and then it's 3-3 at halftime against the championship side? Bonkers. Netis Makulaitis really coming to the fore. He really helped. He scored the first of their goals, set up the second. Newry will feel slightly hard done by in the sense there was a moment between Shannon Clucas and Lorcan Ford. Clucas was holding back for it. It was in Newry's half, holding them back. It was a yellow card every day. But there was a bit of pushing and shoving afterwards and a bit of physicality. And for me, I think there would be very little complaint if, I'm sure it would be from the Carrick side point of view, if 2 yellow cards. I don't think there's a red card incident in there. I thought 2 separate yellows could have easily been given to Clucas. The referee decided that wasn't what he was going to dish out. How would that have changed the game at 4-3? We don't know. But big showing for Newry, which I'm sure they'll take into their league phase moving forward. Just at the games that didn't get played, Dollingstown by Clare Comrades. These are all weather-related. Delays, Glenavon Dundela, Institute Loughgall, Mona Park against Belfast Celtic. So probably Glenavon Dundela, the real big loss from a big picture point of view. That could have been a really fun game to be played on a Saturday. That'll then just get moved on. Well, Institute Loughgall could have been interesting as well. They'll all be played next Tuesday. Let's go.
If I were to give you a considered prediction, I would fancy Institute at the Brandywell against Loughgall. And I mentioned about Dundela going to Glenavon. Paddy has turned it round, but the Dundela are a good outfit. Remains to be seen, but it was a good weekend for the championship. Those 2 sides shoot, and Dundela will have taken note of those results at the weekend.
we then move on to the last 16 all of a sudden, and the draw for that. And after all the complaints that, no all Premiership sides being drawn together, well, you don't have to worry about that now. Some big games set up here. Of the final 8 games, last 16, it's going to be either Dollingstown or Ballyclare against Institute or Loughgall. Great draw for all those sides. They'll be very, very happy with that. The Swifts against Coleraine, that will be an excellent game. Really interesting to see that in a cup format, it must be said there, and that's a big advantage for the Swifts to have that down at Stanmore Park. Bangor Anna, I was hoping for Bangor Ards, but again, what a firecracker of a match that was only a couple of days ago, and they get to do it all again at the end of the month. Ballymallard host Carrick again. Carrick going all the way down to County Fermanagh. How will that play into that matchup? Belfast Celtic O'Mola Park against Ards. Cliftonville will take on the winner of Glenavon Dundela. Crews will be hosting Limavady. Can Limavady do it again, this time up in Belfast? And of course, all eyes will be on this fixture as soon as it came out. It's really becoming such a thread of the season, these two. It's back to being a blockbuster game, I think, for all people across the league. It's going to be streamed. Of course it's going to be streamed. It is Glens against the Blues.
Yes, I actually sat listening to the draw with Jim Magilton to get his reaction. And every time there was 2 Premiership clubs drawn together, he's going, yes, it's all about a process of elimination. And when Glentoran and Linfield come out, you got to realise that one of the sort of favourites will go out. And for Cliftonville, Jim was happy with Glenavon or Dundela. A home tie is all you want. Going to the big game, you wonder, has this spooked Linfield, this Glentoran bogey this season? Will Glentoran be able to sort of maintain that? It's the intrigue of the cup, but that will be a blockbuster of a game. Of course, it'll be streamed, but Glentoran, Linfield, the saga continues, and to me personally, I think Glentoran might just have turned that corner and might be able to see off the Blues. We shall see, but that's the beauty of the Irish Cup, isn't it? In the 4th round, the 6th round, we're going to see Glentoran, Linfield doing battle. And to me, if the winner of the Irish Cup does not come out of that tie, it'll be Cliftonville, in my view.
The 5th meeting between those two this season, which will mean 6 games overall, based on the assumption that they'll both be top 6 teams come post-split. So, what an interesting battle that'll be, especially with the fact that the Blues are yet to beat the Glens this year, and it's back at the Oval. Brilliant game that will be. Maybe they're sick of the sight of each other. I'm sure they're both feeling it that way, but I agree. High chance that will be a team that will make it to the final. Obviously plenty of football to be played in the cup before then. Just going through it, there's a guarantee where there'll be at least, at minimum, 2 teams not from the top flight, being one of Bangor or Anna and one of Belfast Celtic, Mola Park or Ards. And there's only one top flight team amongst the Dollingstown, Ballyclare, Institute and Loughgall. So we will see how it goes. I'm sure those championship sides would very much, or below, would like to be tied together, and we'll see a relative minnow maybe work their way all the way up to the semi-final or beyond. Quickly touch on the games that happened, because we'll be looking ahead to the first Premiership ties of the season, at least the big first proper game week. We didn't have Linfield against Larne on the 30th of December. We also didn't have Cliftonville against Dungannon, but the games we did have, we've talked about Ports losing to Glentoran. Big win for Glentoran away from home against the top 6 rival currently. Bad one for Portadown, or maybe just a blip for them. I was at Loughgall against Coleraine, where Coleraine got their goals, got their win, and will now move into January. How many more additions will they get? And I guess before I get into the other games there, that's the 2nd season in a row, at least to my mind, where what was the traditional New Year's Day was set aside for a different date. Last year was, well, let's just play it on Saturday, makes sense, and it fits the mode there. Obviously, Saturday would have been too quick off the back of the Boxing Day games on the Thursday. It's starting to feel like maybe New Year's Day is kind of gone now, and perhaps no one's saying it out loud, but maybe the players and fans might prefer it.
Yeah, it's strange because one of the statistics I picked up was that Irish League games took place on a Christmas Day right up to 1975. And then you're left with this outlier, which is the Steel and Sons Cup final. Gets the crowd because traditionally the men get out to go to a match from the
If
Christmas morning.
anybody was going to know that those games were played
Yeah.
up until 1974, Barry, it would be you. This is why you're here.
Yeah. Okay. And for my perspective, Boxing Day is Boxing Day. It is the biggest day. They put the statistics out, 18,000, although I picked up somewhere, I think it might have been Portadown, we're saying in the year 1963, 64, there was something like, there was 10,000 alone at Portadown at Shamrock Park, and there was 18,000. Funny, I don't think Linfield and Glentoran was the Boxing Day sort of fixture, the big two thing. I think Linfield played Cliftonville or something. And but now you get Boxing Day, you have people coming home. It is the tradition. And New Year's Day could be hit or miss, as you know, because you're depriving players of that celebration and supporters, and reporters, of course, on New Year's Eve. You're saying, I need to watch myself. I had to drive down to Ballinamallard, get in bed early. Yeah, I think you're right. New Year's Day is gone. That Saturday, or not the Saturday, maybe it's just the way it fell because of the date that Christmas fell, and you could squeeze another set of games in between that. But no, I think you're right. This notion about New Year's Day is another big gate. It's a hit or miss sometimes. Maybe if you had all the fixtures, all the derbies on New Year's Day, it might be different. But Boxing Day is set in the calendar. Beyond that, if people are off, I was at Carrick Crusaders, excellent crowd there. Basically on a very cold night, and New Year's Day, God, I was glad to get the day off, Peter, and I'm sure you were too.
Well, I've done New Year's Day. I've enjoyed dishing out that pun in my report. I'm always there, as you are too, Barry, ready and willing to report on games. Looking at 2025, Boxing Day is going to be on a Friday, which would then obviously make New Year's Day a Thursday. I would argue that it would probably be just as easy to do the games on the Friday, and then the games on the Tuesday, and then the games on the Saturday again in the Irish Cup. I could predict that now.
Well, if you read NIFL, I'm sure there's a minute of one of the meetings where this has been discussed and agreed to move away from this, maybe as an experiment. It's a bit like the first League Cup final that was on a Sunday was a roaring success, and now that's a fixture that's set in the calendar. It's a champagne day. It's an occasion, and obviously NIFL have discussed this, and they've thought, and they've consulted the clubs, and the clubs have went, yes, we'd prefer New Year's Day off. It means that they can concentrate on the Irish Cup as well, because the Irish Cup was very early in the new year. So the Irish Cup probably is what the clubs are looking for the big gate. And maybe that game on New Year's Day could be 2 or 3 days before the actual Irish Cup. Might be impacted upon crowd-wise because, people may not. But if you split it up and you space it out well, you will get, 3 decent crowds for those games. But it's too much pressure, Peter, New Year's Day sometimes. And maybe it's just the way that football's going. It's a wee bit more, let's not do it the way we've always done it. And to me, that was fine. It was perfect. It worked well. The sad thing, of course, is that we had the tragedies with Michael Newbury, etc. And that impacted on those games during the week. But yeah, this is it. This is just what you're up against. You don't know what's around the corner, and it's a positive in my view.
The games they didn't reference there was Carrick against Crews, this kind of Stephen Baxter Bowl, 0-0, an injured Offord sitting on the bench for the entirety of that game, totally scudding my fantasy team there, and just shows you really just how stout that Carrick back line have been. And then Glenavon really becoming a bit of a story based on how they've been playing in the past while. They get that win over Portadown, and then they go to Ballymena and get 2-0. I mean, Paddy McLaughlin hasn't had a whole lot of games under his belt since he took over in November. But there's 3 wins out of 4, that one defeat being away against Linfield at Windsor Park. He's come in and he's changed things quick, and they're starting to look pretty good as they move up the table.
And the other thing you have to recall about that game, there was 2 red cards for Ballymena.
Which I've done a lot of Ballymena Glenavon games in my short time reporting on games, and I tell you what, red cards in that game feel traditional to me.
Yeah, but it didn't help Ballymena, and I say Jim Irwin
No,
was not best pleased. And they went out on that pitch in good faith to lose 2 players, Kim Nelson and Sean Brown.
and
Uh,
Jim Irvin as well, that
yeah.
got
Oh,
sent off.
yes, indeed. It shows that there may have been a lack of discipline on the pitch. I'd say there was a few heads, teacups in the changing room after that, because some players may have had to look at themselves, because a 2-0 victory for Glenavon, you have to ask yourself, to what extent did my red card, contribute to that? That is not the Ballymena that we saw between October, November, right up to the middle of December. What is happening there discipline wise? And you've got 2 red cards, and then you're going to have a suspension there. So Jim has got an issue there. And
And 9 days removed from 2 red cards in a game against Loughall,
mhm.
where Ben Kennedy and Josh Carson got red cards, where you can get into the nitty gritty of shoulda, coulda, woulda, but that's 5 red cards, including coach, across 2 games there.
Absolutely. And it was Brian Clough. There's a documentary coming on about Brian Clough. His whole issue in life was about the team stick together, no red cards, no indiscipline on the field. That is, people would look at that from the outside and say that that is a symptom, or that is an outcome of a malaise there. Losing one player is, unfortunate, but losing 2 players in the one game, going down to 9 players, is not what you anticipate of a side going out. Okay, they may have been, I haven't looked or reviewed them, but still at the same time, the straight red and 2 yellows, it allows Glenavon the comfort that they would not have had. They didn't feel they would have had going up there, and Paddy was able to get the team to do what he wants them to do: play the ball, pass the ball, get the goals, and go back down the A26. Where Ballymena are sitting in that changing room afterwards, pointing the fingers, saying, "You didn't do this, you didn't do that, and this is why we lost." And yeah, that, as you say, the level and the number of red cards picked up sort of indicates that there's a lack of discipline there.
Before we touch on the next couple of games that we can all look forward to in the NIFL Premiership, it's January now. The window has swung open, as it always does, and a few of these names are now wearing the shirt of their new team. A few of them have jumped in recent days. I can just kind of give a little update, as I'm sure we'll do week to week on this podcast. We all knew, starting with Ballymena, that Patrick McElhenney was going to come in. And of course, there's no real movement there in regards to, we saw Coates moving on to be a coach at Glenavon. John Hearn has stepped away from that club. But Noah Stewart going to, for a fee, going to non-league football in Maidenhead. He'd been transfer listed in the summer. It wasn't going to be a Gore. That seemed to be a relationship that wasn't long for this world. And he's got his move, and it's to England. Probably a player who they could have done with this season, playing at the level he had done previously for Ballymena. One of those weird moves where we'll probably see in, like, I don't know, 11 months, 9 months, 3 months time, we're like, oh yeah, remember he's playing the Irish League and he's scored some crazy hat trick against Barrow or something.
Oh, correct. Yeah, and I think money talks, Peter. At the end of the day, clubs are trying to get. If English clubs are interested, it's very hard to turn down, because you're on a different level of, finances there, and players are getting paid at a different level. So we're early in the month of January, and there's been a lot of toing and froing. I was looking at Portadown, they're sort of strengthening the side. McDonough, Jamie Ray, Jack Henderson placed on the transfer list, and also they're going to be bringing players in. Uh, you just have to say to yourself, it'll be a different league. And this is what happened in the championship last year, is that, for example, Dundela, maybe it was 2 years ago, were high flying, and Niall Curry was at Dundela. And when he went to Portadown, they were just waiting. And that happened in January. He just came in and took the pick of those players, and Dundela collapsed. So there are some players floating about there. I was speaking I know at Cliftonville on Saturday there was talk about this and talk about that, but the rumor mill's rife. But some teams will have to buy very, very astutely, particularly those. I mean, Loughgall have moved; they've brought in the strength in the side as well. It's an interesting time, Peter, but it could transform how the rest of the league plays out. But those teams at the bottom, it's more about survival at this stage, and as I say, as January unfolds, it's going to be very, very interesting to see exactly who strengthens and who gets that sort of class in to maintain a challenge, A, for the league or Europe, or indeed to avoid relegation. And the championship is going to be a ripe ground to pick some of these players from.
I had a hook at some of the players that Carrick have brought in this Wexford trio. I saw Rhys Webb and Ethan Boyle on the pitch there. Ethan Boyle, well, mix these two up. Seems to be your wing back type player. I thought Rhys Webb in the middle of the park, as much as he didn't have a huge amount of physicality, he was just playing these nice little balls from deep. He just kind of picked his passes very, very well. Be interesting to see if he can keep going there. And of course, that's a team there who have confirmed some of the players for them long term. As I believe I saw a contract for Cherry has been extended to 2027. Also saw Nennis Michaelitis, who's really found his form under Stephen Baxter, so they're continuing to keep up the pressure there. Cliftonville, you have returnees from loan. Harry Wilson's moved to them. I think the one to look out to, and we can kind of put these together, Coleraine and the takeover, it's really come to the fore recently. And the Cooper deal, there's now talk, has been reported by Patrick Van Dort of the newsletter, that they've signed Levi Ives on a pre-contract. That's a big move. I mean, I don't think he's been anywhere close to his best this season. He was my player of the year by far last year. And I think you were perhaps alluding to it. Ronan Docherty wasn't in the squad in the cup. He's someone that's being touted as perhaps being, in the eyes of Coleraine, a player they want to bring in. So they're making moves, and they are making big ones, are Coleraine.
They are. Levi Ives is a very interesting acquisition. Levi Ives, to me, has been one of the standout players over the last 7-8 years, and that's a sign of the ambition. Joel Cooper, of course, there, and they're building for the future. Coleraine, they have that plan in place, and let's see where it takes them. They might be a bit of a dark horse for the Irish Cup, in my view, because they do seem to have that ability there. Dylan Boyle, Matthew Shevlin, McLaughlin, Kyle Spence. You know, they got through the first round there, or the fifth round, and they're progressing nicely. They're like dark horses, in my view. But Dean Shields seems to have, he seems to have a plan in place, and we'll see where it takes them. But you can see by the ambition of what they're doing, getting players, there must be money there. And I mean, they're the best supported team beyond Linfield in the top flight. The town of Coleraine has got such a potential for support and for football. And under Oran Kearney, they almost got there, but it's a longer process. But they seem to be targeting the right players, bringing them in. And you never know, it could be a sort of a windfall for Limavady United. The more that they bring in, Limavady could poach a few players away from Dean Shields.
The Coleraine moves, we've got to the point where anybody could sit there and say, well, they're in for player X and player Y, and there's some credence to it just out of, well, based on what we've seen and what they've went and done. Suggest, well, is it like, if they're getting Cooper on a big deal, is anybody safe? Let's just say if you're looking at it from a non-Coleraine point of view, and give any slight credence to the chat about Ronan Doherty, a very talented player. Who are the players that are moving out of Coleraine? Mackenzie Carse is gone. He is left the club. And then Kieran Harkin, who I thought added a bit of something to that team. His loan move from Derry City has come to an end. So that's near the pitch they need to fill. Centre midfield. He would have fit in very nicely. Ronan Doherty fit into many teams as centre midfields very, very nicely, but it seems to be an area that there is a minor hole in, let's just say, for Coleraine. Crews bring in a goalkeeper from Newington, Ryan Brown. Joshua Connor comes in from Hibernian. He's a striker. I don't know too much about him, but Offord's injured. He's on loan. He's got a contract. I'm led to believe at the end of the season with St Mirren, not exactly a free agent based on just development and age and all that type of stuff, but he hasn't played for a while. It's an injury at the minute, but is offered going to last the season at Crusaders. We'll have to see. What a way to start off your Dungannon Swifts career. I've said that the Swifts needed a wee third extra striker just to compete in there. Brandon Birmingham, Rhode Island Rams. I'm not even going to pretend I know anything about him or the team, but a well-taken goal in the cup match. Glenavon have been very clear with Paddy McLaughlin coming in, and condolences to him in the loss of his father, who only passed away in the past few days.
Yeah, absolutely.
They brought in Sean Carlin, a lot of good feelings around him, young player from Institute. Tag Ryan's coming in from Derry City, goalkeeper. That adds a bit more competition in that area. Now out goes Jimmy Dorn. He's gone on loan to Newry. Cohen Henderson's went to Oxford Sunnyside, and James Carroll has returned to Loughgall. So I expect, particularly in defence now, Quinn's come in and slotted in at centre back very well for the past few games with Barnaby Keown. But if I'm thinking of an area of the pitch that I would expect Glenavon to have coming in, it's probably centre back.
Yeah, it seems to be. Going back to Coleraine, Peter, was very, very interesting that Stephen Douglas said that, the smartest thing probably about going in for Joel Cooper was the fact that to other players, that is sort of laying down the gauntlet and saying, look, this is the club. We have poached the player, which in my view has been the best player for a number of years in local football. And that can only be good for Coleraine. And Kieran Harkin went back to Derry City. Nadine Shields described him as a fantastic player and a diamond. But if he's gone back to Derry City, you're bringing in Cooper. You really are sort of saying to everybody else, look, come and join us. This is the plan that we are sort of, this is the road that we're on. And I think they need to be commended for the bravery in doing that, because it was a bit of a shock to everybody that Joel Cooper was leaving Linfield and going to Coleraine. But I think that's a benchmark that is setting down, throwing down the gauntlet. Everybody say this is our ambition, and this is where we're going. If you want to come and join us, join in with this dream, this plan, because I think it hasn't come to fruition. But hey, it's there in a blueprint, and I'd say watch this space for Coleraine evolving as a club, as a full-time club in the next year or so. Let's see where it takes them. But as I say, interesting across the whole of the Irish League. What you say about Glenavon, about a centre-back, somebody like Paddy McLaughlin, who was a fantastic centre-back, would play in that style. You would put your house on him every day, going out to give everything on that pitch. That might be the missing element for Glenavon that they need in order to shore up that defence. But as I say, interesting times, Peter. We all know you need money, you need ambition, and the clubs that usually show that and display that are the ones that benefit the most. But it's like a revolving door. We know.
Lauren will likely know this more than anybody in recent times, not exactly in the past few years, but for a team like Coleraine to attract the players that they're looking for, yes, they're putting a statement out there that they're going for right to the top, but I imagine that comes with a slight touch of Coleraine tax now, based on what other teams will want from a team like Coleraine to get their players. I'm sure players will think, make you just maybe add a wee Brucey bonus there and let's make this happen. But it's clear that the Bandsiders are very happy to make that happen if it gets the right players in through the door. So the absolute fascinating team in this window. The Glens did a lot of business early. Kieran Coyle and Shane McElhenney coming in from Derry City. Particularly Kieran Coyle, I think I'll add a lot of beef to that back line. Chrissy Pattison, he's coming in from Waterford. Tricky winger, and that's exactly what they need. Might take time to settle in the league, but that adds an spark to their attacking line, and that's exactly what they've been calling out for. There'll be plenty of eyes on Larne as well. Nothing in just yet, but Josh Seary goes back to Preston North End from his loan. Ditto for Sam Todd going up to Derry, had a bit of a run in the team. And then Barsh Altentop, a lot of talk around his partnership with McKinnon for Portadown. He's now went to Portadown permanently. That suggests to me that he was only on the 1 year deal. Clearly, Altentop, there wasn't a place for him under Gary Haveren's stewardship, and he's going to see out the season and potentially beyond for Portadown. Similar to Glenavon saying, well, Altentop was never really a part of the side beyond a few games in Europe. Siri, Todd, centre back's going to be top of there. Look, they've got plenty. They've got a few young players coming in, but in the likes of Wallace and all the rest. But that kind of only leaves them with Donnelly, Bulger, Want. The reason those players went on loan because they wanted more bodies in there, and if they can find the right player for the right deal, I wouldn't be surprised if they're suiting up in the red of Larne over the next few weeks.
Yeah, see, Logan Wallace, 19 years of age, he's a new long-term contract. But what's interesting about Larne is that they seem to be sort of getting everything in place behind the scenes. You look at Alan Manus going today to Larne, and I believe there's been a change in the management of the women's team at Larne. So maybe given what has happened this season with Larne, there's things that have to be sorted out in the back room to get that framework there that can sort of feed through to the team. And this season, I think it'll be a consolidation season for Larne. But it's early yet, and the fact that Cooper was able to go to Coleraine and Larne had that sort of power, and not for the last number of years, is an indication also that on the field it may be secondary. That money from Europe will come in at some stage, and then it'll be interesting maybe over the summer to see where Larne go if that money does come in. But it's interesting times, Peter, and I'm very intrigued about the Alan Manus going to Larne. Let's see how that all sort of pans out as well.
Nothing for Linfield again. Status quo. I know in the episode which you can listen to now, where I previewed the January transfer window, there was a huge amount of holes, but you can always bolster a side like that. So is there money to spend? We don't know. Linfield haven't really dished it out in recent times, but if it's the right player, they'll go for it. So nothing in or out. Loughgall, I think this is always going to be a huge window for them, and getting them in early could be decisive, because they're looking a wee bit off it at the minute, both on the pitch and when it comes to the league table. Keelan McAleer goes to Oma Town, that Phoenix club there, obviously going back to somewhere closer to home, I would imagine. Conor McDermott, this hasn't worked out for him. He's moved to St James Swifts, but bringing in, here comes the cavalry for Loughgall. James Carroll, as we talked about, returned from Glenavon. Just, I guess, we'll add in to the room there of defensive stability. Will he go into the side straight in? I'm not quite sure. Robbie Mahan, I don't really know too much about him, but young midfielder, comes in from Drogheda. When there's a big Hoey-shaped hole in that side, I would imagine he will aim to address that alongside Fra McCaffrey from Newry. Played plenty of time with Warren Point, and is probably the type of player that Loughgall could do with. I mean, looking at their squads in recent times, they're lucky to name a full bench there, and that's not including Coach Ali Taggart kind of coming out of semi-retirement to sit there in his shorts. So I mean, they needed bodies, they needed them quick. Will they make the difference? We'll just have to see.
Well, I think Dean's being rather realistic. He says it's a different world which Loughgall and Coleraine are operating in at this precise moment, and that's the reality of it. He says, look, his view is that we're hanging on to the coattails of everybody else. They call it the second season syndrome. That element of this, surprise is gone. So he has to sort of measure Dean Smith, who he can get at that price realistically. And it's the haves and the have-nots of local football. And Loughgall have been exposed when you consider the spending power of Coleraine and potentially Linfield and Glentoran. It's different leagues they're actually operating in. So Dean has actually thought to themselves, who can come in and do a job for what we need to do for the remainder of the season? At this stage, it's not looking great for Loughgall. It's looking dire, in my view, out of the cup. But they need to just consolidate and take every game like a cup tie and look above them to see, we can get 3 points there. But it has happened on the last number of occasions. The top six, bottom six is not as pronounced as it was previously. But that little sort of dogfight at the bottom, and Dean knows he's in a dogfight, so he needs to try and get somebody to do that job that is required for 90 minutes to get them points. And that's the reality of where they're operating.
Portadown are the final team to talk about. As I said, Barshalton tops into the end of the season. Big move. They've been signing a lot of their players to extended deals. One of them being Lewis McKinnon. I think the real bright performer when it comes to centre backs in this league this season, so it's important to get him now. For next season, where he will go, we'll have to see, but it gives them a bit of stability moving forward. Jack Duncan comes back from loan at Dundela. Rabi Minzamba comes in. He's a midfielder. We're talking about James Thielen. Jordan Williamson's back in top flight Irish League football.
Yeah.
I mean, not a massive area of need for the Ports, but I'm sure that really just helps their room. And if there was something to happen to McCary, I mean, that is as good as you can kind of get, really, as someone waiting in the wings when it comes to Jordan Williamson. Decent amount of experience. And so far, Liam Mullen going to Derry at the end of his loan in midfield. So, you know what Niall Curry's like, wheeler dealer. We could perhaps expect more. It's early days yet. I just want to chat about Newry because I saw them there. I mean, they have not had a great season, to say the least. Sitting there in 11th in the championship. They were bottom at one point. Big names like Adam Sally and Stephen Ball are now on the transfer list. I mean, if they're not performing for Newry, are they going to be a player that maybe top flight teams would look at? Obviously, Fran McCaffrey might be in that bucket that Loughgall have taken a go on, but they bring in a number of players, like I said, Brian Healy, Doran. They bring in a new keeper as well. We've talked about a few championship sides there. Do you expect them to turn it around, or have they got a fight on their hands?
Well, I think Brian Healy's one of the top acquisitions. I've seen him for Ballyclare. He got a hat trick one afternoon. I was up there. He's special. Of course, Ballyclare have got their own scenario, and manager, of course, moved on. Brian's got back to Newry. He's got that potential goal scoring, in his pocket. Stevie Small's gone from Ballyclare, and you're wondering, losing Healy, knowing that Healy was going, was that one of the things that might have influenced that? We never know, we'll not know, but he was pivotal for Ballyclare. They've exercised their right to take Healy back. They need him to score those goals. Also, Jamie Doran, good signing. Darren Mullen. When I see Newry and I see the position they're in, I think back to that fabulous documentary was done, which charted Newry's sort of return to local soccer from bankruptcy and the club dissolving. And the last thing I want to see, I love going down to the showgrounds, Dorothy Taylor, and ever present there, Darren Mullen, good footballing people, and they know that they are in this potential do or die dogfight. I haven't seen Newry this season. It's just one of those things, but I will make a point of going down. But the fact that they have signed well, those two players in particular, shows that they know what needs to be done, and goal scoring through Healy is crucial to that. And he will play a great target role for Newry. And let's just see how things go. They're this thing, they're too good to go down as a club. But unfortunately, it's a cruel world, footballing world we live in.
Excellent. Well, I get to be the man to say, and this is based on what I saw there on Saturday. Look, he's 25, so he's not like some sort of teenager. I just saw there his previous is at Distillery, but I liked a bit of Ryan McNichol, big, tall striker, kind of big-bodied player, and I mean he's got 10 goals for Newry this season. I don't think he's ready to jump up to the top flight just yet. But I quite like what I saw, so could be a name that a lot of fans that say of the top flight could be looking down upon and going, who is that? And I'm saying, think of big, tall striker who can strike a ball and kind of get stuck in. That's a McNichol for Newry.
And what I like about him is he seems to be on the score sheet plenty of times, and
Mm.
there's a strange spelling to the McNichol, Nickle, and he gets the penalties. He seems to be, pivotal to that Newry side as well. Came from Lisburn Distillery and 10 goals, 21 appearances. And yeah, he's got the potential. Uh, let's just see. Darren has brought in those two players we've talked about, and we're in for an interesting second half. They have the you saw it on Saturday, the battling potential that they had. Okay, Carrick, they got their fourth goal in 49 minutes, but that sort of up and at them that Newry gave to Carrick Rangers on Saturday, if they can bring that to the remaining games in the championship with a strengthened side, hey, they may not be too far away. 2 or 3 wins could really change things for them.
Chatting to Newry ones on Saturday, I was thinking, what has been going on there? And they very much said that it's getting used to that division again, and a couple of injuries have hit them hard. And I think with Mullen back in charge, bit of continuity, they know what they need to do between now and the end of the season. Very, very clear. And they've added players to try and help them in that aim. As I said earlier, Cruise Larne, that's been played on Tuesday. Larne then go ahead, looking ahead to this game week that's in front of us. Inver Park, Larne, Cliftonville, it's being streamed. Like, I kind of think of this as maybe a goalless draw, perhaps, as Cliftonville with a bit of trouble scoring recently, and Larne kind of being the same. Haven't played too much over the past week or so. Do you favour any of these two? I think it's kind of maybe 0-0, 1-1.
Yeah, because I always remember that first game of the season 2 years ago. Glentoran went up to Larne and Larne were champions, and we thought, what a game, and it ended up in a 0-0 draw. Um, Dark night, rain, snow, you name it. I was very impressed with Cliftonville on Saturday. He made 6 changes, did Jim Magilton, to the side, but I don't know. When Larne are on the ropes, they've got two options. We all have two options. They can bounce back and really annoy and sicken people and say, well, that's what we're capable of. Beat Cliftonville 2 or 3-0, or else they can go and get duffed 1-0 by Cliftonville. But I think you're right. It's going to end up a draw. To me, Cliftonville are sort of looking at the Irish Cup as that way to Europe. They discussed it Saturday on the radio. 4 games potentially can get you into Europe. And from my perception on Saturday, I think the way Jim was looking at the draw, he was saying, let them eliminate each other and we'll just keep going if we get a home game in the Irish Cup. But yeah, Larne are aside. I mean, any observer will look at it and go, Larne are not. Larne are aside are in the doldrums. That's the way I would look at it. And Cliftonville will know that they're for the taking. But look, these games, you may build them up, but they always end up 0-0. We know that.
Maybe
I must mention, Peter, a guy, Jack Barry, come on for Cliftonville, a great wee right winger.
yes.
He was absolutely superb. He was like Stanley Matthews on the wing. He was weaving in and out, crossing that ball over. And yeah, I was very impressed with him, and it shows you that what they have on the bench.
Maybe I'm mixing this up. Diminutive might be a word I would describe Mr. Barry.
Yes, would be about 5'6", 5'7".
Low center of
Yes, be hard
gravity,
to
let's
knock
just say.
over, and that was very evident on Saturday. The ball went to his feet. He was riding challenges, and the low center of gravity, he really did excel down that wing. And every time he got the ball, the fans at Solitude, they were on their feet going, go for it. And he did. And I saw him come on against Portadown in the first game of the season at Solitude, and he's a bit of a favourite with the fans. But yeah, I mean, I was sitting in the stand at Solitude saying, this guy has got such talent to burn. Fair play.
Weird fixture, actually, this, in the sense that I kind of think this is going to be a potential cracker of a game. And I wouldn't have said that a few weeks ago. Glenavon, Coleraine at Moranview Park. Now, Glenavon usually have the going of Coleraine up at the showgrounds. I'm not quite sure how Moranview Park settles amongst all those stats. But I mean, it's not a side that Coleraine want to be going up against. A team that look physical at the back. Like I said, 3 wins out of their last 4 games. I'm struggling to bet against Glenavon in this
I,
scenario, despite the fact that Coleraine are great up
Well, one of
top.
the things, Peter, that comes to my attention is that, for example, on Saturday, Larne, who play on the beautiful 4G surface, it suits their football. Same with Coleraine with the new pitch up there at the showgrounds. It's a different game when you go and you play on a traditional pitch in the middle of January. And the team that trains on it and have played on it, and it's their home ground, to me, that gives them the little nice intricate touches that teams like to play that Coleraine can play at the showgrounds. It's a different game altogether. And I would fancy Glenavon to kick on and to win that game because it's a it's going to be 90 minutes on a heavy pitch, and I think Glenavon will be more geared towards that, and it'll not suit the style of play of Coleraine. So, yeah, I think January and February can catch a lot of teams out who play on those 3G, 4G surfaces, particularly when they go down to a heavy pitch. And all the little training and the little neat triangles are a lot more difficult, and it becomes a battle in the mud. And that's, I believe, where Limavady came through ultimately on Saturday.
I'm gonna go 2-1 Glenavon there.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite maybe in the big mucky fields. It's Crusaders against Dungannon Swifts, and I didn't see that 2-0 win for Crusaders coming on Boxing Day. They're able to stretch their legs against Knockbreda in the PIL, which how much you read into that, I don't know. It's a stalemate against Carrick earlier, so I'm back. I'm very bullish on Dungannon. I think they look physically up for it. I think they have the energy and they're so bright. And I think Dungannon are going to come in here and they're going to win 3-1. I really, really like them. I know it's a sea view, but they'll be used to that surface. And they've had a few back and forth matches recently across the league and cup, so they know each other quite well. But Offer could be a massive factor there. Will he be fit? We don't know. And I'm going to back Dungannon here, and I think they're going to win it quite handily.
On Boxing Day, I saw Glenavon and they beat Loughall at the Steinmore Park. I was pretty impressed, although Loughall did get a late goal, and it was a bit sort of scary for the last couple of minutes. But I call it the Rodney factor. They seem to play in a certain way on that pitch for Rodney Macquarie. And when they're inspiring, they are inspiring. And I could see them going up to Seaview and play an attacking game. And the way Dungannon's playing this season, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go away, in my view, with a 2-0. Crusaders against Carrick on last week when I was up. Crusaders made a few changes, and Jordan Owens was on from the start. And it wasn't pretty to watch. Carrick should have won the game. They had the better possession, the better opportunities. It wasn't a shot that was on target throughout the whole game. And I thought to myself, okay, they got that win over Cliftonville on Boxing Day, but that's a different kettle of fish. That's a local derby. This is your more bread and butter game. And the way Dungannon have been playing 11 wins this season and going up to, they'll not fear going up to Seaview. And I could see Rodney's team coming away and maintaining their excellent form and coming away with a win there.
10 goals in their last 2 meetings, both in the cup and in the league. And both those games were up at CV. So if you're looking for entertainment, go there and be disappointed by the luck of the draw, meaning it will be 0-0. 3-1 at Dungannon there. Glentoran have a great chance to keep on rolling, although Ballymena have not been a particularly friendly side to them, I believe, in recent times. Glentoran have to go up to the showgrounds. Pitch ain't looking good, but it's not benefiting Ballymena either. I think Glentoran across the 90 minutes will have the poise. I think they'll have the precision. And I could see this being a late scramble last 10 minutes, but I think if Glentoran get their lead, Ballymena will struggle to claw them back.
As I said before, for every good result Glentoran had in the early part of the season, rather than kicking on, they got a bloody nose within a number of days. However, with that Declan Devine now in that longer term position, and you can see by the last number of results that Glentoran, they can do a professional job. They're going up to a heavy pitch. Ballymena, in my view, are a club standing on the precipice. This season, have they done as well as they can do? And is it all downhill from here? You would sense that the Glens could go up there, do a job, 2-0, in my view. Ballymena are on the ropes to an extent, and Glentoran are they're buoyant at this stage, in my view, and they're playing the way Devine wants them to. I could see them score early and add one in the second half, but I don't think Ballymena will win that game.
No,
But Glentoran for
it's
me.
it's not massively sinking feeling for Ballymena, but it's all starting to the bright hues of that huge run that they had after their first four losses are starting to diminish ever so slightly. I think 2-0 for Glentoran there, and just keep and secure and hold on to that second place they have in the league. Linfield, Carrick Rangers. This could be trickier than many people might expect. We all know what Carrick Rangers are going to do in this game. They're going to play a physical matchup. They're going to line up with potentially three big bruising centre backs, with McCullough and Crow being the players that are in there just to flush out any kind of Linfield attack. They could struggle. We've seen Linfield struggle against Carrick earlier on this season. But I'm still going to back Linfield, and maybe it might just be that 1-0, a penalty. I mean, it's probably was a bit of a training match against Wellington Rec, if we're being honest. McDade coming back and scoring, that's a brilliant, brilliant story for him. Let's hope that he gets properly into the rhythm for Linfield over the coming weeks. I'm sure a lot of Blues fans will be hoping for that as well. I think Carrick can make this difficult, but ultimately I think the Blues will, by hook or by crook, could be ugly, they'll get the 1-0 win.
To me, Linfield seem to have this season. I call it Healy time. They call it Fergie time. The number of games they've won with a late goal broke the hearts of a number of teams. They will attack Carrick Rangers. It just ultimately is a question of how long that resistance can stay out for. Matthew Fitzpatrick seems to have hit a purple patch for. He just needs to get on the end of a half decent cross, and I think he'll not miss. He's on form. So the Linfield juggernaut at Windsor Park sometimes can shudder, but to me, it's not going to shudder on Saturday. If they get a goal early, it could be difficult afternoon for Carrick Rangers.
A final game, Lakeview Park, Loughgall against Portadown. I saw this game at Shamrock Park earlier on this season, and I thought Loughgall were a bad matchup up for Portadown, in the sense that they can kind of break away and get that goal. In fact, there was a disallowed goal late on, I think there, and as much as I'm edging towards it, but I appreciate I've been pretty harsh on Portadown at times this season. In this prediction part of the pod, I think it's going to be 1-1 in that game. I think Loughgall are going to sneak something from it, and perhaps Portadown are kicking themselves. Ports, to kind of banish the ghosts of the past few weeks, they need to score early, probably need to score more than once, and maybe go into halftime 2-0. But I think that's going to be a nervy game for Portadown going against their rivals in Loughgall.
Yeah.
And
But factor X, Peter, is the defeat to Anna United, and this is another local derby.
And it doesn't feel, BMG, Lakeview, not a million miles away. It's different surface, but it's kind of tight, crowd on top of you and all the rest. It's doesn't play into their hands.
You see, Loughgall, they've lost to Coleraine 3-1 at Lakeview, and then prior to that, Ballymena got the best of a 3-2, but they're conceding goals at home. Portadown could punish that, in my view. What I would see is that I think Portadown need to kick back from the Irish Cup defeat. Niall has got some new players coming in. Loughgall, yet again, Loughgall are on the ropes. We've discussed Dean has brought in some players, but Portadown going down there, they'll bring a big support, heavy pitch. But to me, I think Portadown could shade that, maybe 2-1, because Loughgall are capable of scoring down there, but sadly, they're capable of conceding as well.
I would question Portadown's top six credentials once again. They're if they don't get a win there.
I just would love to see them finish in the top six, because that would excel any sort of predictions you'd have had at the start of the season. But they need to start picking up those 3 points. And to me personally, I think Niall knows that team inside out. Niall managed to, they're all very close within that. They call it the hotbed of Irish league football now. And Portadown will need to bounce back. They probably got a right going over. And in training this week, it'll be emphasised you need to go down to Loughgall, a team never mind that derby factor. Our fans will be down there, and I think if they get an early goal, I think they'll kick on.
Barry, thank you so much for jumping in and giving all that extensive knowledge, helping us work our way through all of the fifth round and beyond. You've had a few appearances on the pod this year, but for those who maybe missed out on those weeks, 2025, a year of book release in the Flynn household.
Yes, a little book of little book of Irish soccer. I got my advanced copies. As I said, I spoke to George Hamilton, who wrote the foreword to the book. And George wrote in his foreword about his own particular greatest memory. His father, Jim, played for Cliftonville in the 1930s. And in George's particular book, he mentioned about he'd searched the Ireland Saturday night because his father had scored a hat-trick for Cliftonville against Queen's Island. And I was able to turn it up. And I sent it to George. And because George is synonymous with Radio Ulster, BBC Northern Ireland, RTE, who better to sort of give an overview or a forward to the book? He talked about his own greatest memory, and that was when Cliftonville beat Portadown. He was the commentator. Is Tony Bell going to fix it? He has 1979 Irish Cup final. So he wrote about that memory, and he talked about his father, who was Cliftonville stalwart, and what pride that gave him. And that was just his memory, because when he read through the book, he can see all these glimpses into these little sort of hidden, beautiful histories across the whole island. Because football started in Belfast, it is prominently about football in the north. And George just sort of read the stories. He commentated on some of the games as well, and particularly that Cliftonville win in '79. That was the pinnacle, and he remembered his father because George used to go to Solitude. And I was speaking to him last week. He says his dad brought him to every Cliftonville home game, and except he wasn't allowed to go when Linfield were playing, and this is back in the '60s, in case there was sort of any sort of aggro. But George said, it's the book I've been waiting for, and I just thought that was a fantastic little tribute. But yeah, it's due in the shops on the 6th of February, and we'll see about getting a wee launch and a bit of publicity about it. But yeah, hopefully somebody will read it and say, I never knew that, and we'll see.
There's so many of them, and people who have listened to your previous appearances on the podcast know exactly that. Two things. I'm pretty sure, I maybe got this totally confused with a different player. I'm pretty sure Tony Bell taught me maths at one point, which I find just funny you brought that up. And Queen's Island, a team who were of the 20s, they were up and then they were down and they were gone. But they did win the Irish League, and did have a few players that played for Ireland.
One of the stories, Peter, just to round up, is the famous time in 1890 where the Kilties, as they were known...
1890, Barry!
The Kilties won the Irish Cup. What regiment was it, if I can just... well, they were in 1886 in Belfast. There was serious rioting, and they brought over the Scottish regiment. What was it again? Not the Black Watch. Give me a wee second. I'll be able to tell you. But they were brought over to actually stop the trouble on the streets of Belfast. The Gordon Highlanders, right? And they won the Irish Cup, and they beat Cliftonville in the final at the Ulster Cricket Ground, which is Ulidia playing fields. And they're in history as the only side with 11 Scots to win the Irish Cup. And they actually were in the barracks in Clifton Street in Belfast, and let's just say they were the darlings of the young girls of the area, and they paraded through Belfast with the ceremonial pipe band right up the Armour Road where they won the cup. And it's a fantastic story. And the thing about it was that it embarrassed the Irish Football Association so much that a team from a regiment, the Gordon Highlanders, can come and win our cup. And it took a few years for Irish football to recover.
Oh, Barry, like, where you have space for all these stories, I do not know, but I very much enjoy the fact that you get to share them with myself and everyone that listens to this. Barry, if people see you at a championship game, come say hello to you. But until next time, thank you, and I'll chat to you soon.
Thanks, Peter.
You're here at the end, which means you are dedicated, and only the dedicated ones are going to be there. Pog Uglies, 21st of March, It's a Friday, slap bang in the centre of Belfast for the very first ever Kicking Match Live. Want to be a part of history? No matter how small in the grand scheme of things it is, do it. You can be a part of it. You can be a part of the very first show I'm going to do. It's going to be me. It's going to be the Around the Grounds boys. It's going to be the odd special guest, potentially filtered its way through it. So a one-off bespoke show. You can get yourself there. Lock in your seat. It is all via a little ticket link if you just go to the social media pages. What are they? They're on Instagram, Facebook, and or Twitter. It's at Kicking Match on all of them. Great to see you then. Hope everything over New Year's and Christmas was calm and lovely as possible as it can be. Thank you for being back. If you haven't checked out some of the previous episodes over the past few weeks, they're there and they're ready to go, including a big January club by club preview of the transfer window, and there's also a recap of all those big bumper Boxing Day games. Check that out. Thanks for checking this out. I will see you this time next week. Tally ho.